Hello everybody, I'm Krasi Attasio. Today I will talk about the Mesopotamian astrology because it is a rarely used term. It is not very widely mentioned and used and known astrology. And I'll explain you what Mesopotamian astrology is and why I am practicing and researching the ancient Mesopotamian astrology. What is Mesopotamia actually? Which geographical area Mesopotamia, the lands of Mesopotamia cover? First of all, the name Mesopotamia comes from the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, who would call this way the land between the two rivers. And these are the two rivers, Tiger and Euphrates. And I've just found on Google a very beautiful map that I will share with you to tell you what is this about. So look, this is the map of Mesopotamia. It was in the beginning the Sumer, and then like 3500 BC it was taken over by the Akkadians, where we have the contemporary city of the city of Babylon as a main city. So this is Mesopotamia, and this is indeed the land between the two rivers. So you have the river of Euphrates and Tiger, or Tigris. I'm not sure how they pronounce it. So these are the two rivers. These are the lands of Mesopotamia. And as I told you before, this was Sumer, and then it was taken over by the Akkadians. And this is the city of Babylon, contemporary in Iraq. And this would have been the city of Elam, contemporary Iran. And actually funny, but these two lands, these two countries, mighty countries, especially Akkad, were the two fighting enemies. They never loved each other at that time. And they would even say that if something good is happening for the city, for the land of Akkad, it is definitely bad for the land of Elam. To such extent, they didn't like each other. So these are the two lands. Here you have Syria, or contemporary Syria, and the land of Assyria, Lebanon, Jordan, Turkey, Iran, and so on. And this is the Persian Gulf, and this is the land of Mesopotamia. It was a huge land, and not without the reason they call it the cradle of civilization, because this is the truth. Because this is when everything was authentic. This was when the sky and earth were connected and really literally connected. Like this was the time when you would see divinities walking on earth, and there would be really connection, literally, not only spiritually, but literally connection between sky and earth. So this is just to illustrate geographically where the land of Mesopotamia is. And then I will tell you about Mesopotamian astrology. What is this? Why is it authentic? And why am I practicing Mesopotamian astrology? What is the reason behind it? Astrology comes from Mesopotamia, and very far in the past, not sure how far, but in some of my previous videos, I was mentioning about the legend which was found on cuneiform tablets using the cuneiform writing system that I will show you in a second. But let me tell you, the legend of the first Hermes, because the authentic astrology is Hermetic. It follows the rules of Hermes, of the Hermetic teachings. It is about what above, so below. It is about the fact that everything is creation of God, that we are particles, and we are actually all coming from one source, and which is God. Which every divinity, every God is also a representation of only one God, who is the eternity, who is the universe. So the astrology of Babylon, of Mesopotamia, was authentic, was divine, and was definitely astronomical. And it originates from Hermes, from Mesopotamia. But where exactly? There was this region, this area, Durankuak, most probably. And this area of Durankuak is where 5500 BC, the king Enme Duranki was ruling. He was a ruler, and he would live thousands of years and rule for like I forgot, I think 27,000 years or something. I forgot exactly how many years he was a ruler. He was a saint. And he was given, and actually this was the first Hermes, or at least the first Hermes that we know of. Hermes or Hermes. I think Hermes sounds most appropriately. So the first Hermes was living there before the flood, before the big flood. And he was living while the Black Sea that you know now, which is a salty sea now, the Black Sea was a sweet lake. So he would live and rule there. And there was this moment when he was uplifted on a golden throne by the gods, Shamash and Adad, and he was given the knowledge of divination, of astrology, mathematics, astronomy, magic, and knowledge of these divine ancient notions. And this is the first source of information that we have. And these are, as I told you, Durankuak are the lands somewhere around contemporary Bulgaria and Romania on the Balkans. And then we had the flood, and then we have like 860 BC, we have another incarnation of Hermes, and that time he was called Trismegistus in Babylon, and then the ancient knowledge of astrology was revived. It's like it came up to our knowledge again. But what is interesting here is the writing system. Why, you would ask yourself, if it happened 5,500 BC, how come we know now? This is due to their amazing writing system. What they would do, it is a cuneiform writing system, but how? They would take mud, because you know you had the two rivers, Tiger and Euphrates, and then they would just create on their palm small pieces of mud or clay, and then they would write. And let me show you how the writing system looks like. So this is basically how the writing system looks like, and these are syllabograms. And the syllabograms come from Sumer. As I told you, Sumer was the Sumerians would have different language from the Akkadians. The Sumerians would live in Mesopotamia up until 3500 BC approximately, when the Akkadians or the Babylonians would come into power, and they would take over only the writing system, which they would use with their own language. So the Sumerians would speak language which has a bit in common with the contemporary Turkish. But the Babylonians took the syllabograms and they would write their own language, which is the pre-Semitic. It's like the language that is underlined in the contemporary Semitic languages. And which are the Semitic languages? These are the Arabic languages and Arabic language, actually. It's only one, and the Jewish, the Israeli language. So this writing system is amazing because it has a very well structured grammar, and it has the syllabograms that you see. They work also as symbols for a particular word, like the word key, for example, for earth would have a specific syllabogram, but also the word key can mean key, like literally phonetic expression of the sound key. So as you see, this syllabogram would have very, very specific use. And this, what you see now, is the Old Akkadian, which later on transformed into New Akkadian with a bit of change and so on. The grammar was amazing. Like everything they did, the grammar was structured. Not easy. It is the biggest challenge in my life was studying this language, and even I was thinking that no way I wouldn't remember any of this, but because of its perfect structure, mathematically organized grammar, finally and eventually you start understanding it. And actually, even nowadays, if you hear some Arabic, you will recognize some words which come from Akkadian, because Akkadian is a Semitic language, like even like take the word brother, which would be Ahum in Akkadian and Ahuya in Arabic, and so on. And Shamash was the god of the sun, and in Arabic it has very Shams, or yeah, very specific, very similar, I think, sounds. So this is how they would write, and that is why the knowledge is preserved, because they would take the clay or the mud from the river, they would write it with the specific tools, and they would just let it dry under the sun. And that is why it is preserved until nowadays. Of course, how was it preserved? Of course, there were these genius people like the famous king Ashurbanipal, who would collect them and create own library. And I think somewhere in the city of Nineveh, the library was found. And now even you can see some of it in the British Museum in England. And a lot is still in Nineveh in Iraq. But this is why we have this knowledge now. Of course, so much remains untranslated. But this is the real, this is just a small memory, because there is so much that was destroyed, and during wars and many devastating events. But this is how we come to see, to touch just a bit of these wonderful times, wonderful in terms of real knowledge, when everything was authentic, when the heaven and earth were connected, and where the astronomers would not sit and use a software stuck in front of their computers, but they would literally observe, connect with the sky, connect with the divinations, connect with the and do real astronomy and astrology. So it is authentic. And why also authentic? Not only because we see how beautiful they wrote, and also not only because it comes from the past, and maybe we have this romantic feeling towards our history and past, but it is because it was very scientific. It is because the mathematics, the astronomy, any knowledge, any science that they would touch, they would do to perfection. Like it's amazingly how perfect they were in keeping diaries. Now you can see the astronomical diaries of Babylon. There were kings like Sargon the Great, and Sargon the Great, still his bust was to be seen, I think, in Nineveh, in Iraq. But Sargon the Great would really have his team of astronomers who would observe eclipses and draw results from observation, not from imagination and giving you philosophical, psychological reasoning. No place here for psychological, speeches. It was all mathematically proven. Observation, note, result, statistical analysis, like science should look like. What is astrology? It is a science. So Sargon the Great, he would have in his temple this, how you call this, in the middle of the temple, this high tower. And there they would climb his team of astronomers. Together with him, he was astronomer as well, and they would really observe eclipses. And not only eclipses, every sky phenomena. They would know exactly, derived from observation and statistically derived algorithms, mathematical algorithms on the heliacal phases of the planets. So because they would observe, note, result, scientifically proven result. They would know everything. They would know about Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. And we only think that we found out now. It's even funny to say this, And then somewhere with the rulership of Alexander the Great, the decay of this knowledge started with the Greeks, because the Greeks have this quality to copy and paste knowledge of other civilizations. Everything like mathematics, astronomy, they would take from Thracians, from Babylonians, and they would say it's their own. But astrology, it's only Mesopotamian, and it comes from proven sources. And let me show you more. This is, I don't know if I managed to, yes, this is the famous Babylonian astrolabe. And this famous Babylonian astrolabe, it's like a calendar. Wonderful, amazing calendar. It's a drawing of the sky with the constellations, with the three stellar paths of Anu and Leo and Ea, where you would have the heliacal risings of different stars, 3 per month, rising and 3 setting. And this heliacal phenomena, which will be the symbolical birth and death of stars and planets, was recorded. And when the Greeks would dominate, you know, in these lands, and when Alexander the Great would come and conquer Egypt, they would simplify the algorithms of the Babylonians, and they would create very simple, simplifying rules of the heliacal phases and so much more. And with this, the ancient Babylonian knowledge was kind of yeah, the word, even though repeated, is simplified. Simplicity. And when you have knowledge, simplicity cannot be, is not appropriate. So it was simplified. So the decay of astrology started with the Greeks. And even if you hear now Hellenistic astrology, nothing like this exists. It is Babylonian astrology. And if they say Hellenistic, it could be the astrology that was heavily simplified Babylonian astrology. So this would be the very correct title, if there would be such field of astrology like Hellenistic. As such, doesn't exist. So this is the Babylonian astrolabe. And maybe I went too far explaining you what the Babylonian astrology is, but I wanted to show you the cuneiform writing system. 200 people in the world approximately have a good use of the Babylonian, Akkadian, Old Akkadian cuneiform writing system, and I'm proud to say that I'm one of them, because this is fascinating. Because why I opted for this? Now, I used to, when I started studying astrology, I would do modern tropical astrology. And like I had a private teacher who would give me these fascinating lessons. And then approximately 6 months after we had very intensive studies, she would tell me, so yes, that's it, we covered everything. And I was very, very disappointed. I was thinking, how is this possible? A knowledge that seems to me endless and so fascinating to be over. And then she said it's just over. And then when I was making use of the modern astrology, it simply didn't work out, because it is a forgotten projection of the ancient knowledge. And it simply didn't work. And one day that my destiny met me with the ancient Babylonian astrology, which is difficult. But it is like a passion. So, and it says a lot. And if you have, for example, if the modern astrology would have validity, like if you would analyze your horoscope using the means of what is called now modern tropical astrology, maybe you will have like 50 to 60% validity, reliability of what you will hear. If we would know everything from the ancient Babylonian astrology, we would have 100% validity, reliability. But we don't know everything, because this is science, and because until I'm alive, I will study this astrology. But I would say that I would be able to tell you more, like much, much more, when I analyze your horoscope with the means of the ancient Babylonian astrology that is saved and remembered for us on the ancient cuneiform tablets. And it will be much more, much more. Percentage I can't tell you, because mistakes are always possible, because this is knowledge, and in science we make mistakes. But I will be able to cover much more and to give you much more reliable analysis from what would be called now tropical astrology, which would concentrate on your psychological profile and will give you maybe large explanation on psychologically what you are, and not so much more. So to be specific, to be as exact as possible, and not perfect, because perfect you can't be. Maybe one day we'll be able to become perfect once we translate everything from Mesopotamia and Babylon and Sumer, but not yet. We are not given this knowledge yet. It will be fascinating. It will be like beautiful. I can't describe it. When we'll find everything, but it was not given. The universe is not allowing us to know everything. However, the more we thrive, the more we do, the more we engage ourselves into translations, the more we find out, of course, and our efforts are rewarded. But the authentic knowledge, the knowledge of the stars, is the ancient Babylonian astrology, because this is the anatomy of the sky. This is the astronomy. This is when gods and people are connected, divinities and people, because everything that is happening above is manifesting in certain ways below. And the only way to be able to find out how is through authentic science, like the ancient Babylonian astronomy, the anatomy of the sky. And to sit in front of a software isn't enough. It makes much more sense to look and observe. So you saw the astrolabe, you saw the beautiful cuneiform writing system, and I felt like explaining you what this is, because not everyone knows, and this is normal, because this is the most ancient known to us. Of course, there was much more before, but known to us civilization, and it is fascinating. And I thought of explaining what this is, and actually it was so connected, you know, the sky and earth, that you would have the epics, like take the known story of the Epic of Gilgamesh. It is astrological. Everywhere you see omens in their writings, everywhere you see astronomy, everywhere people that would know how to invoke dreams, they would know how to, which rituals to make in order to manifest certain events in their lives. They would perform magic. They would know how with the stars to diagnose disease, and how with the stars to heal a disease and maintain good health. They would know this. Of course, their civilization was also not perfect. They would have very crazy laws. Like if you read the laws of Hammurabi, the king, which exist in English and in French translated, you would see, and there are also many other laws, but I'm telling you the ones that you can easily find online. You will see such funny examples of, like, for example, if you find that the wife of a husband was cheating him, but if this cannot be proven, as nobody saw this, but still, if she was accused in cheating him, then they would throw her in the water, and what the signs that they would receive would say whether she was guilty or not. So yes, there were some very difficult for us to understand routines and rituals, but this is normal because this happened like 5,000 years ago. And yes, I'm fascinated because it is fascinating, and most probably I lived during that time. So thank you for your attention. Maybe this was interesting, and your comments are very welcome.